let us discuss Friday Night Smackdown. I was about to get it all wrong from the beginning. It's Friday Night Smackdown, November 22nd, 2024 from Utah. I think it's Salt Lake City, Utah. Oh my God. They need to stay away from places like this. Utah crowd was dead for most of the show. Dead. They were assassinated early in the night. We're going to talk about Triple H's comments about the product and younger wrestlers and older wrestlers and all this kind of stuff. We're going to talk about that too. We're going to discuss that in addition to SmackDown. That's of course in our news and notes segment that we got here. So let's start there. I'm not going to get too much into, the Triple H character here, but we will be discussing some choice quotes that he had made on the Greg in the Morning Buzz. So Triple H says, "Oh my God, we just had a pop-up block my entire view." All right, so it says, "Nobody actually texts me during the show because they know I'm not going to answer them for the most part, but it's afterwards and it's interesting, the different points of view." So I want to stop right here. And Kevin Nash constantly says that he texts Triple H during the show. Like, he constantly says that, right? So he's saying nobody actually texts him during the show. Mostly people text him after the show. So he says, "I know guys across so many different generations. I think there are some older performers that look at the way kids perform today and say, well, they're not doing it right. It's all this other stuff. They don't need to do all this. They don't need to do all that. I get that. But it's the way these kids consume it today. There's sayings about when things start to leave you in life. The first thing to go is music. Many older people, do you see them get older? Oh, music today sucks. And back in my day, that's when they made real music. People put their heart and soul into it, and there was real emotions there, and it was great. No, you're just old, dude. That's one of the first things to go." So this is there's a lot of truth here, because there was a little trend that they were doing on social media. Introduce yourself using 4 albums. And I instantaneously went to 4 rap albums, because that's all I listened to when I was younger. And then I was like, wait a minute, I'm 40 years old now. I don't really listen to rap anymore. Not really. And my tastes have varied over the course of my life. While if you'd have asked me, 24 years ago, in 2000, it would have been 100% rap. And it would have been different rappers too. But you're asking me today. And so it was like The Roots, Nas, Michael Jackson, Marvin Gaye, as a how it best, and it's still 2 rap albums, but one is like a rap band, and the other is Life is Good by Nas, which is a more mature rap album. And it didn't ask me what's your 4 favorite albums, but what albums do you think best represents you as a person right now? And I thought Game Theory by The Roots, Life is Good by Nas, I Want You by Marvin Gaye, and Thriller by Michael Jackson. Because Thriller by Michael Jackson is kind of what I used to be. When I was a fan of Michael Jackson as a kid, it's the kind of stuff I go back to. I Want You is kind of the more romantic side. Game Theory is kind of going into my thought process of, growing up in Afrocentric circles, and Life is Good is the more mature rap album about relationships and family and things like this. Even though I don't have kids, it was some stuff there that you can really relate to as somebody who's getting older. And when Triple H says, okay, the music is the first thing to go, that strikes a chord with me, because that's absolutely right. Absolutely right. But it is also true that music is made differently. Because there was another trend on social media about what happened to R&B music. And people were saying like, oh, R&B died in like 2000, and R&B, what happened? They started cursing in every other song. There's no more innuendo. It's all vulgarity, and all that's true as well. But me being a little bit older, I'm thinking there was a time where R&B music was indistinguishable from rap, and it started with R. Kelly doing all the crossovers with like all the various rappers of the day. And that's when R&B started getting pretty vulgar. And this was in the 90s. This was in the 2000s. So for me, R&B as an entire concept is just, it's somebody singing rap lyrics without the murder. That's pretty much it. If you're really looking for what people traditionally think is R&B, I think of it more as soul music. That's where I will get the Isley Brothers and Luther Vandross and all that kind of stuff. They would look at it as R&B. I wouldn't look at it as this is the same genre as Genuine. This isn't the same genre as Cisco and Thong Song, and Voyage to Atlantis is not the same genre in my book. But music is a good one to look at. And you can look at everything and say pretty much people are stuck in their ways. This is how they consumed music. But there is still objective changes in how things are done. It's not like the music is the same. It's not like the wrestling is the same. Not like the movies are the same. The techniques, the technology, all this stuff has changed. And so people are commenting on those changes. So Triple H continues, says, the stuff was great in your generation and you learned it a certain way. But the kids today learned it a different way. And what they see and what they think is cool, that's what you need to give them. I can't control that. I learned this 30 years the hard way. It in no way, shape, or form is about what I want. It's about what they want. I'm not sure about that. That last sentence, I don't buy it. A lot of people say, oh, well, Vince was just booking what he liked. Well, Vince had a crowd full of children laughing at, John Cena's corny jokes that the adults were pissed off at. They didn't want to see that. They didn't want anything to do with that. But there was like 8-year-olds in the crowd laughing at, some of the worst John Cena stuff in the world. And people thought Vince was doing it to entertain himself. It's like, do you see all these kids with the C Nation headbands and wristbands and stuff on? That's what he's doing this stuff for. Now Triple H is saying, oh, I'm doing it for the kids and the young ones. They like all this stuff. Well, Triple H is almost 60. I'm a kid to him. He was an adult. Like, you're a kid if I was an adult when you were born, you're a kid. All right. I'm a kid to him. He was an adult when I was born. So he's probably looking at me like, you're a kid. Like, other than the grace of glorious genetics, I don't have gray hair yet. But there's other people who are in my age group that have grays. They have almost grown children. I shouldn't be your target audience. I shouldn't be the target audience of your wrestling product. Because I do stuff like this where I overanalyze the product because I've been watching it for so long. I've seen everything. So it should be about creating new fans. That means going younger. But I appreciate that he's trying to say that it's not about him while he puts his name on everything and shows up whenever he can on television to put himself right smack dab in the middle of everything. Executive producer Paul Levesque. Got to put his name on every episode of Raw and Smackdown and NXT. But it's not about you and what you want. Yeah, right. So he says, if it becomes about what I want, the show will die. if it's what they want, if it's that big overall picture, I think in the music industry, if you're trying to force these bands to make the music you like, they'll go out of business. If you're making what hundreds of thousands or millions of kids like, they're going to come see those concerts in droves. That's what you're trying to get to. Well, Triple H, that's just very obvious. Hate to break it to you, but you're not reinventing the wheel on that. And, you know, children's tastes, they change. You know, we're circling back to the beginning here. Music tastes change. There's a whole generation of white kids grew up listening to rap music, and the older white kids can't stand it. Guys in my age group, they never listened to so much rap until today. Even if they did kind of like some rappers. I talked on the live stream about, bands like Saliva and Seether. When I said when white boys were white boys. When they weren't Mac Millers, they talked like Negroes. And there's a lot of these people seem to be racially insensitive, but those kinds of white people have a good point. That their children don't talk like them. They don't really try to look like them. They wear baggy clothes. That was kind of skater culture at first. But now they're becoming a little bit more face tattoos. The crazy stupid tattoos and all this. And it was doing that stuff before, but grills, the Paul Wall grill and stuff. Like, you got white boys running around with grills. You're like, my son don't look like me. My son don't, it's a disconnect. Congratulations, older white man. You have met the same wall as, our fathers met. And, these boys walking around with, red flags and red shoestrings and everything. And that stuff has significance. But I don't believe at all that Triple H is this great understanding booker. I don't understand. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all. I think he's just telling people what they want to hear. Because for a long time, that was the stereotype, is that WWE was all about booking for one person and that was it. And that wasn't always the case. It didn't have to be perfect to be obviously something that was aimed at growing the brand and growing the audience. And then you also have Triple H, who, again, he insists on everybody being 40 years old at the top of the card, which is a Triple H thing. Because, again, when Vince came in, he was always looking for something that was new. What's the new? Now, some of the old heads in the back that put the shows together, that might have been the problem. The Kevin Dunns and the Bruce Pritchards and Michael Hayes and all those guys, they might have been part of the problem. But, Vince had his entrenched group of people, and that's what they did, and that was a problem. It was standing in the way. But these extremely dull episodes of Raw and SmackDown pretty much every week, I mean, with the exception of a big moment here and there, these shows are pretty goddamn boring, if we're being honest. And I remember saying, I think I said this on the live stream too, when people were talking about how bad 2019 was, and they talked about, the Corbin Roman Reigns feud, with the big dog mascot and the dog food and all this kind of stuff. I was like, well, that stuff was 5 years ago. And we can go back further than that with all kind of crazy stuff that occurred. But what are you going to remember from this era? It's been 2 years of Triple H almost unfettered, with the exception of, a little bit of, I think, 2023 when Vince came back. For the most part, it's been mostly Triple H and what he wanted to do. It's going to be Bloodline stuff, and that's pretty much it. The constant attempts to get guys like Shinsuke Nakamura into the rotation, trying to make people care about Tommaso Ciampa, trying to get people to give a shit about, folks that they really don't care about. And whether those people exist or not is not really something the audience is going to argue with you about. Sometimes ludicrous things can be memorable. And I'm going to mention one more thing from social media, then we're going to move on to Smackdown. There was another, there was people showing how Drew McIntyre, his career was almost over in 2022 because he had to wrestle Baron Corbin at WrestleMania. And I'm thinking like, wait a second. He had, I don't know, a short series of matches with Baron Corbin, and all of a sudden that was going to be the end of his career because he wasn't in a featured spot at WrestleMania. I mean, these things are even cyclical even within the year, because you're coming 2 years off of Drew McIntyre being a top guy, being the world champion, coming out of WrestleMania. What was that, 38? No, it was 36. WrestleMania 36, him pinning Brock Lesnar and then going on a run where everybody complained about every single thing he did on television for weeks on end, saying he shouldn't have been world champion, and he wrestled for the world title at WrestleMania 37 against Bobby Lashley. And all of a sudden, because he had a bit of a middling thing here in 2022, all of a sudden his career was going to be over? I don't buy that. I'm not buying that, But it's that thought process where these people are, poking things out of context. And I realize like that's part of how people are consuming the product today. They poke things out of context. Most of these people, it's a TikTok generation, Instagram, YouTube. It's a 2-hour production. You probably really only remember certain things from the production in the first place. Maybe Drew McIntyre was in that position wrestling Baron Corbin because there were other more important things going on at the time. Kevin Owens was main eventing that show with Stone Cold Steve Austin. That was Vince's last match as well. I think he wrestled Pat McAfee that year. Was that his opponent? Cody Rhodes returned at WrestleMania to fight Seth Rollins. It was the first 2-night WrestleMania. There was a lot of other stuff going on. Sorry, we couldn't fit you in, Drew. So, I understand what Triple H is saying, but he's not getting over on me. I see through you, game. I see the game. Let's talk about Smackdown, though, because that's why y'all came here. I didn't mean to drag it for almost 20 minutes into my distaste for Triple H's comments. We're going to wrap this thing up. The big angle, we're going to give you an overview because this thing is already too long. CM Punk is the 5th man for the Bloodline team. When I say Bloodline, I mean Roman Reigns. So CM Punk is making his debut in the Roman verse. Now, it did make sense due to the fact that it's in connection with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman can't fight on his own behalf, so he has to have somebody fight for him. And the person that he chose to fight for him is CM Punk, who is, of course, a Paul Heyman guy. It's a perfectly sensible decision to make. All right? But it's out of left field. Punk has had nothing to do with this storyline at all. Now you got Punk and Roman in the ring together. That could be interesting. But it's clear that this whole thing, and Punk kind of motioned it in the ring when he was after the big brawl, when they brawled with the other Solo and his guys, that this is about Paul, it's not about Roman. Right? So that's fair. My heart was set on it being Brock, because at least you could say, well, Brock is historically an enemy of Roman Reigns. but has always sided with Paul, but they're not going to use Brock for, obvious reasons. How do I feel about CM Punk being in this match? I think it does more for Punk than it does for Roman, because Punk as an act, I hate to use that word, but it is what it is. What was he going to do now that the Drew McIntyre thing is over? Okay. And that was sort of the big question for me. It's like, okay, so what did Punk do? What is Punk is doing now? It's kind of like, okay, naturally, I thought they might put Punk in the ring with Gunther at that point, but they're going to do this. Okay, so what's after this? And I'm thinking that this is going to be the catalyst to get Punk and Rollins again at each other's throats. Even though Rollins was asked and refused, Punk took the spot. So now Punk helped Roman Reigns. So now we're going to have another parallel similar to what's going on with Cody and Kevin Owens, where Kevin Owens has a problem with Cody Rhodes because Cody Rhodes helped Roman Reigns. Is it going to be a same situation here where Seth Rollins, who already has expressed that he doesn't like CM Punk, but now he's going to double down because CM Punk helped Roman Reigns? It's possible. Also, I didn't get that this makes sense because I thought the whole point of Bronson Reed being brought into the story was because Seth Rollins was going to be brought into the story and they've been feuding. But apparently now, Bronson Reed is just in this match because Triple H wanted him in this match. Okay, well, if you're not going to put Bronson Reed's rival, the person he's feuding with, in the match, you was just going to put anybody in it, then why does it have to be Bronson Reed? The whole point was to bring that feud together. I don't know. I know that, sometimes you err on the side of cool. And erring on the side of cool means everybody's just going to be excited that Roman and Punk are in the ring together. They're not going to put too much thought into it. Similar to WrestleMania when it was like, okay, nobody cares. Roman and The Rock are going to team up. We don't give a fuck how we got there. It's not going to matter. Oh, they jumbled it. They fumbled it. They put their fingers all in the cake. Oh, sorry. But we're going to err on the side of cool. Roman and The Rock as a tag team in the main event of WrestleMania. Okay. Everybody's going to overlook that it was dumb how we got there. And then in a few years, nobody's going to ask any questions. They're going to look at the poster and say, man, where were you when? People do that all the time. They show you a poster like the Attitude Era. They do it all the time. They show you all these video packages of, these feuds. Like, okay, you didn't sit through all these Raws. Trust me. I know you didn't sit through those Raws. So CM Punk being the partner, it's fine. It's out of left field. It's their attempt to keep this thing going. I don't know what more you can do at this point, however. It's like CM Punk is like the ultimate trump card in this story. Now that you've put CM Punk in this story, now what do you do? Right? This story has to end now. And I'm not talking about the entire Bloodline angle. That's not going to end until Roman wrestles The Rock, at least. But this part of the story has to end now. Maybe you could have one more match, the Roman solo singles match, because it hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to assume that Roman is going to pin Solo in this War Games match. And then if you couple that with the fact that Solo pinned Roman at Crown Jewel, they're going to be 1-1 against each other, leading to their big rubber match, 1-on-1 Solo versus Roman. Okay. But that needs to be it. All right, that has to be it. You have to end this at some point. This thing has been constipated for weeks. You know, I think they dropped the ball in this leg of the story quite a bit. Again, with Roman not making amends, and they didn't have a lot of time, but that's their own fault. Not making amends with Jimmy and Jay and Sammy, but instead, you know, all of these guys coming together through circumstance. Again, it's the Avengers. Through circumstance, everybody comes together. Not because they actually want to hang out or, you know, or anything. It's just kind of, I don't like that guy. I don't like that guy either. Well, let's fight him. Okay. And then they just go and do that. You know, we could have did a regular Survivor Series match, but I did that all last week. I just talked about how we should have regular Survivor Series matches. But I'm not a huge fan of where we're going here. And also, if the Jade Cargill angle taught me anything, I think we should have just did an angle where Tonga Loa got killed, and we just did this thing 4-on-4. I mean, did we really need Tonga Loa? No, we don't need Tonga Loa. He sucks. He's incompetent. All right. So why can't he slip on a banana peel and fall through a windshield or something? Why does he got to make so much money and have so many bad bitches floating around him? Nobody likes Tonga Loa. So I need this angle to. I'm looking at the clock like you need to wrap this up. This has been going on since April now. You know, it's time to wrap this angle up. Saturday night's main event. That should be it. Roman solo. That's it. Roman pins him. That's it. It's done. Now we need to move on to things that matter, which is like Royal Rumble, The Rock, WrestleMania. You dragged this thing long enough. Let's go into the next piece, which is Jade Cargill being splattered all over a windshield. Chelsea Green wins her qualifying match because Bianca Belair leaves the match that she was winning because somebody murdered Jade Cargill. She was wearing open-toed shoes, heels, which I have already said they have no place. Now, she wasn't wrestling, so she was glamming it up. But it's clear to me that nobody pushed her, shoved her, or threw her. That what happened is that she was, you know, toddling around in those shoes, and she slipped in some spilled coffee, and she fell from a high place onto a windshield. That's what happened. I'm pretty sure if you watch all the videos, that's what you'll see. Except, now we got ourselves a whodunit. And now we got to have ourselves a replacement. Charlotte has been teased as the replacement for Jade Cargill. Before we get to Charlotte. Okay, so Jade can't wrestle in her match for the U.S. title tournament. We're going to try to go through who did this. It'll probably be Piper Niven, you know, or somebody like that. Or maybe they'll go far and it's Nia Jax. Is she still going to be able to defend the tag team titles? Like, this is like a serious angle. Like, Randy Orton just got pile driven and got written off TV for weeks, right? I would imagine Jade Cargill, you know, being knocked off of a parking garage or whatever it was to her death, near death. She's going to be written off for like a month, right? I would imagine. She's not going to come back next week in a neck brace and be okay. I'm guessing she's going to be gone 2 or 3 weeks. So that leaves that Bianca's probably going to get eliminated from this tournament because she's going to be outnumbered. She's not going to have Jade having her back. Okay. That's actually a sensible way of doing this thing. It's actually sensible. Because now you got to have, and even though Bianca's, you know, sometimes Wonder Woman, you can write her in a situation where she's outnumbered and, you know, a crafty heel gets over on her. So now, again, Jade Cargill is taken out of her match. They're protecting her because they didn't want her to win. So very smart of them to figure out a way to further this thing without without Jay losing. And Charlotte has been teased. She's been teasing herself on social media. And a part of me is saying it's a red herring, and it's not Charlotte, it's somebody else, and they're just teasing Charlotte. Mainly because there was also a conversation about Becky Lynch making a return. There was also some teases by Trish Stratus about returning. And I'm thinking everybody can't be teasing a return at the same time. Like, literally one day Becky Lynch was like, I ain't letting Dominic Mysterio smash me in the head with a cage be my last moment in the business. And then you got, Trish Stratus talking about Monday, and she's taking photo shoots in her gear with her hat and everything. And then you got Charlotte doing stuff. I'm like, wait a minute, how is everybody teasing a return at the same time? I'm very suspicious of these sorts of things. Now, a boring decision would be Charlotte. That would be a boring decision. It'd be exciting because we haven't seen Charlotte in over a year, and I'm interested in what Charlotte 6.0 might be able to do. This new model of Charlotte, with more surgery, what she might be able to accomplish in this space at this particular point in time. But I don't think the other two are really great options. I don't think Becky Lynch needs to be in this thing, and I don't think Trish Stratus needs to be in it. Now, it would be fun if it was Trish. It's always fun if you add Trish to things. But for me, I just kind of, I really want it to be somebody else. Call somebody up from NXT and give them the shot. Likely, I don't remember who was in that match though, so I can't tell you who I think is going to win. But it probably will just be Charlotte. It'll probably just be Charlotte. But I did like the angle with Jade Cargill. They didn't try to shoot it so that you could see her falling. What they did is just showed you that she was outside the ring dead already, which is traumatizing to Bianca Belair. She panicked and, almost threw up and fainted. Next match was LA Knight defeating Santos Escobar. Shinsuke Nakamura cut a promo about LA Knight being insecure, begging for the fans' attention, saying that, it covers up how scared he is and his fears are justified. Then because you can just do this, he just walked down the ramp to menace LA Knight. Distracted LA Knight for a little bit. Of course, not enough. Santos Escobar loses. 40-year-old Mexican guy wrestling in a t-shirt, despite the fact that he's actually in good shape. People couldn't care less about Escobar, which is incredible because he's talented. Again, there's so many talented people don't get fan reactions because Triple H puts no emphasis on them. He just books them as jabronis. Meanwhile, Shinsuke Nakamura, who looks like warmed over death, he comes out there. He attacks LA Knight again, beats him up. Look, I don't hate Nakamura. I don't even dislike him. I actually quite like Nakamura. I liked Nakamura when I watched him in Japan. I liked him when he came to the United States. But the last several years, Nakamura has been washed beyond belief. And his physical limitations have been quite obvious. And I'm not thrilled about LA Knight at this point either. He's a tremendous personality. But I don't get into his matches. And he hasn't had a storyline worth of shit in over a year. I think the Logan Paul thing was okay. I think the feud with Roman Reigns was probably the best stuff that he's done. That was in 2023, if I remember correctly. So LA Knight's kind of coasting. Now, there is always opportunity for that to change. But I don't think Nakamura is going to be what the doctor ordered in terms of LA Knight needs a hot opponent. I just think that you missed the boat with so many guys who could have been great opponents for LA Knight. And so many people think that this guy should be like the main eventer. He should be the world champion or something. Nah, he's in the position he should be in. He's an upper mid-carder. Him being a megastar and all that is just catchphrase, unless he's really moving a lot of merchandise. And I don't know, but I haven't heard anything about him moving a lot of merchandise. I don't have a problem with him like scuffling like Cody and these kinds of guys every once in a while, as a heel. But when you talk about baby faces, I think Seth Rollins was right. Like, the company is in dire need of stronger heels. And what keeps happening is they keep putting all the heels in factions. So there's very few solo heels who have any heat. It's just a bunch of factions with no heat. Like, and then when you beat them clean in the middle of the ring every goddamn week, it doesn't help matters, So, Nakamura is going to get another chance. I mean, how many chances does this guy actually get? I had to ask this question when I found out they was giving Kylie Ray a WWE ID. I'm like, man, she's washed out from AEW. She washed out from TNA. She washed out from the Indies. And you're going to give her, an opportunity, a WWE contract? How many opportunities do you give a person? There's like a million fucking wrestlers out there. You keep giving the washouts a chance. Like, you have a bunch of people on your roster. A whole lot of people. And we keep finding Nakamura. If you rolled the dice in a casino and you kept losing, you think the dice was loaded. If you keep going and ended up on SmackDown mid-card and you keep coming up with Nakamura, I think the dice is loaded. Something wrong with this slot machine. It keeps coming up Nakamura. There's something wrong with this. Moving on. Johnny Gargano and the Motor City Machine Guns have a perfectly logical argument. Johnny Gargano thinks, hey, we should just give Tommaso Ciampa what he wants. He's very mad. The Motor City Machine Guns were like, no, the Street Profits didn't lose. We should give them their match. And then the Street Profits, they walked up menacing Johnny Gargano. And they decided they were going to have a fisticuffs. So Montez Ford had a singles match, and I was actually interested in this, versus Tommaso Ciampa. I like this because it was different. Montez Ford almost never gets singles matches on TV. It was a solid match. He didn't look too bad. He won the match. He won the match clean. After the match, Tommaso Ciampa assaulted him. Dawkins came out there to help. Johnny Gargano did not attack Dawkins, but tried to basically pull Dawkins off and have a pull apart. This led him to getting decked by Dawkins and shoved down by Tommaso Ciampa. So you're telling this story that, DIY is falling apart because, friends are almost always arguing in WWE these days. I think the Street Profits might be the only friends, long-term friends, that aren't arguing right now. At least not yet. Give it a couple of weeks, they'll be arguing and fussing with each other in a minute. The Motor City Machine Guns have all the personality of a bedsheet. A wet one at that. Nick Aldis is on the case of figuring out what happened to Jade Cargill, but he ain't trying that hard. The Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens segment. I want to talk about this because it was an interesting segment. Cody was not wearing a suit, which I thought was... They made that a point to discuss here. He was wearing an American Nightmare jacket, which looked a hell of a lot like those old jackets Lex Luger used to wear. So when he was the Lex Express, looked a hell of a lot like those, Cody. But Kevin Owens lays out his case with Cody Rhodes. And that is that you work with the Bloodline after I fought them for 4 years. They tried to end my career. Cody Rhodes lays out his case with Kevin Owens that Kevin Owens has a victim complex. Despite the fact that he's been so incredibly successful, he still thinks that everybody's against him, which sounds very familiar. Sounds like every feminist and I've ever heard who sits around in, $1,000 studios talking into $200 microphones about how they're oppressed. Because, they couldn't get into daddy's social club. And all the middle class Negroes that, do the same thing about racial oppression. But sometimes people are out to get you. And Kevin Owens is in a unique scenario where he was getting his shit kicked in by 6-foot Samoans every week. That he didn't make that up. That actually happened to him. You know, like we all saw it. We all saw them kick his ass every single week. So in this situation, it's not just a matter of him being victimized. He's actually telling the truth. And then you also realize that Kevin Owens was wearing a tuxedo t-shirt. And I say this is absolutely everything wrong with WWE. We giving this goofy son of a bitch. He's gray. He's fat. He's Fred Flintstone. And literally dressed like Fred Flintstone. All right? Literally. Long cut off t-shirt with a belly. Literally dressed like Fred Flintstone. We giving this guy more opportunities. How many more opportunities can you give a person? How many more? This is just like when we talk about Santos Escobar in the U.S. title, Nakamura in the mid-card of Smackdown, Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens in the world title. Again, his reasoning for why he's mad at Cody is completely legitimate. You know, if you're a friend of my ops, you're the ops, right? But he already lost, and he's a goofball. I don't take him seriously. I don't believe him. So ultimately, they agreed to have a match at some undetermined time in the future, which it better be Survivor Series, just to get this thing out of the way. But they agreed to have this match, and Cody was very upset because of the power driver to Randy Orton. And he says that Randy Orton had nothing to do with this. This ain't about Randy. He didn't deserve that power driver. And I'm thinking all the horrible things Randy Orton has done to person. And the only thing that happened to Randy Orton, he took a power driver in his 40s. Like, no. This man burned a man's house down. He kissed a man's unconscious wife. He kicks a 68-year-old man in the head. Randy Orton was a menace, a terrorist. He is a terrible human being. We've seen it with our own eyes. But now he's like kindly old Uncle Randy. Giving out butterscotch candies and, mellowed out in his older age. And you're like, oh, he didn't deserve that. Like he wasn't a goddamn predator. Not just in marketing. And then Kevin Owens said, I loved Randy. I hate you. I'm like, oh, that laid it on a little too thick. I don't really believe that you hate Cody just because you said it. And Cody says, you don't hate me, you hate yourself. That's the right person to hate if you're Kevin Owens. You should hate yourself. Being all bloated and gray. You look like a corpse. Bayley and Naomi, their match got thrown out because Nia Jax attacked everybody. This just led to, the usual shit. All the women's war games, people running to the ring. Io Sky got no reaction. Utah was like, who's this small Korean girl flying around in the ring? Who was that? Poor Tiffany Stratton. She was still over, but nope. Nobody cares. So that's SmackDown for the most part. I'll give it a thumbs up because of the CM Punk shock reveal, the Jade Cargill angle, Montez Ford being in a singles match, the passion and intensity of the Cody Rhodes, Kevin Owens promo segment. I'll give it a thumbs up for that. We're doubling back to Cody and Carmelo Hayes because Carmelo Hayes mocked Cody for being mad about Randy Orton, and then said that Kevin Owens was telling the truth, and that the real truth was Randy Orton's neck or something like that. It was wild. They're trying to position Carmelo Hayes as being like this shit talker, but if he don't back it up, then who really cares what he has to say? And he's too new to be like The Miz. Like The Miz has. He's rubber band man. You stretch and stretch and stretch. He just comes right back to reality. It doesn't matter. Carmelo Hayes doesn't have that kind of ability yet. He's still ill-defined on the SmackDown roster, which is why he's not that over. You know? So, that ought to be something. But not everything about SmackDown is bad. The show is just kind of bland. They used the women to populate, eat up so much time. The triple threat match actually was not bad. Blair Davenport took the pin from Chelsea Green, which was odd to see, you know, because usually Chelsea is the loser of the match. But everybody wants Chelsea to win this title, so, and they've been foreshadowing it. So I'm not surprised that Chelsea won, and I'm not upset that Chelsea won. So, SmackDown, I give it a big thumbs in the middle. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Talk to you guys later.